This is a 1999 Suzuki GZ250. The frame has been cut, the body repainted, and the motor blown. Hi, my name is Michael. I strive to provide informational, educational, and informative content here on YouTube, and today we're going to tear down and hopefully diagnose this little bobber to see if we're going to rebuild it, motor swap it, or just double it and give it to the next person. First things first, why did I think it was blown up?
The first part I'm unfortunately unable to show you because I do not have a jump box here. But the first thing we tried to do is hook a jump box up to it. Take that cover off, hook a jump box, press the starter, and absolutely nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? Well, it didn't take us very long to figure that out because Suzukis, if you're unfamiliar, are pretty well unique in this concept. I mean, some bikes do this, but Suzuki is well known for it. You have to pull the clutch in to start it. When you pull the clutch lever, it activates a switch here. A switch, which as you can see has been gracefully disconnected by the previous owner. Since just unplugging shit is a little too hard for some people, I went down here and found the two wires that go up to the clutch switch and tied them together. At which point, you could actually hear the starter turn a little bit, but not very much, and then it promptly stopped. If you're unfamiliar, you can turn pretty much any motorcycle engine over by hand with relative ease by just taking off. Usually it'll look exactly like this. You can use a big screwdriver. There's technically a tool for it. You can use some tire spoon or something like that. I just use a big screwdriver. It's not really going to do anything unless you're using like a terribly small screwdriver. It's going to round it out. But take this cover off, and there is usually a 17 or 19 millimeter hex bolt in there that is directly on the crankshaft, and you just turn that. When we did that, it turned about an eighth of the way this way and an eighth of the way that way, which is relatively concerning. So the next thing I did was take a gander in here. My mechanically inclined viewers may realize that this is not, in fact, what a spark plug is supposed to look like, and there is some very, very slight, hard to notice damage to it. So that was pretty damning, but I decided to do what I really shouldn't have done and take a look inside. And because I brought my eBay borescope, that's exactly what we're about to do. If you're familiar with me at all, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for not buying the expensive crap, like Snap-on stuff, Mac tools, all that kind of stuff. I don't see a purpose in it. I'm a Harbor Freight guy through and through. So I'm going to get this inserted in here, and we're going to take a look, and I'll show you what a $15 camera looks like. If you're familiar with what a piston is supposed to look like, then this may not match the description you have in your head. Now, the spark plug hole is very, very small, so it's kind of hard to maneuver this little camera around, but I'm going to try to get a slightly different angle here if I can. Up in the top left of the screen, you can actually see the wall below the piston. If you can see that in the top left, then congrats, because you're one of the few lucky people who has ever been able to see a wrist pin from a spark plug hole. That is exactly what that is. That's going to be the wrist pin, that little shiny sliver visible there. I believe that's what that is. So, you may ask, what is left to be determined? Well, dear friends, for about $80 to $150, you can rebuild the top end of a GZ250. Now, why ever you'd want to do that, I don't know. But that's probably what we're going to do. What I'd like to do today is to get down there, take the head off, take the jug off most likely, and see if we're going to be dealing with just a top end rebuild or if the bottom end has sustained damage as well. I don't know how long it was ridden as it was tearing itself apart. I would imagine, if I had to guess, the reason it's not turning over is not really anything to do with the bottom end. I do believe that there is piston and valve contact, and both are losing at the same time. So to confirm that, I'm going to be taking the tank, exhaust, valve cover, and head off, as well as probably the seat and a few other things here and there just to make this process easier to both film and work on. And we're going to see if that $80 rebuild kit is going to save us, or if we're just screwed and going to have to sell it as is, or if we're going to motor swap it. That is kind of the determining factor here. I think it's a cool bike. I don't like the paint scheme. I think stickering a bike is really cool, and I'm sure this meant a lot to whoever did it, but that person is not me. I also think that I could do a much better job with the tail tidy situation back here. So without further ado, I'm going to go take a ship, and then we're going to take this thing apart.
Getting right into it, the first thing I did was to take off the gas tank, which for better or worse still had over a gallon of gas in it. The tank was secured by 2 bolts under the seat, and when those were removed, the tank just kind of comes out by pulling it up and back. Next, we need to remove the exhaust. Part of the point of this video is to go through diagnostics because the goal at the end of the day is to walk away with a plausible series of events that caused the failure. I'll go in a little bit more detail on this at the end of the video, but for now, we'll just keep track of the noteworthy stuff that we see. For starters, the bike has a 2-in-1 header, and only one of the header pipes had heat tape on it. Not to mention, one of the exhaust flange bolts is missing entirely, as well as one of them being semi-loose. With the exhaust out of the way, we can move to the upper motor mount, which is just 2 brackets that connect the motor to the frame. These have to come off to be able to take the valve cover off in the first place. During this process, I also observed glitter in the exhaust port and a missing screw on the timing chain tensioner cover. And just a little tip here, because I've screwed myself with this before, valve covers tend to have more bolts holding them on than you think they do. Just be aware of this, as this particular bike has 2 hidden under the valve tappet covers, and it took me about 10 minutes of beating this thing with a hammer to figure that out. With the valve cover off, we can see that one of the cam lobes is very damaged, showing deep gouges running all along the contact surface of the lobe. These were very wide and very deep, and worse in person than on camera for sure. The timing chain did appear to be tight when I checked it, so I was able to rule out the bike jumping timing, which is up until this point what my assumption was due to the obvious tampering with the cam chain tensioner. With that, I removed the cam chain tensioner entirely and worked the chain off of the camshaft and was able to take the cam out. Now it's time to remove the carburetor, as it would otherwise make it very difficult to remove the head. This is pretty easy on these singles, but sometimes it still takes a little bit of jimmying. Removing the head itself took a bit of persuasion, especially due to the nature of the damage, but it came off relatively easily. Now, with the head off, it was pretty obvious that it was a fair bit worse than I was hoping. I knew the piston and cylinder were likely screwed, but I was hoping the head was savable. This is mainly because I could not find another head when I looked for it. It looks to me like the bike was actually ridden a fair amount with whatever issue it had. As you can see, impact after impact on the piston and cylinder head that would likely have taken place over hundreds or thousands of rotations of the motor. If I had to guess, probably just hundreds. It would not surprise me if 99% of the damage seen happened in the last 30 seconds of the bike's life. Taking the piston out, we can see just how much abuse this thing went through, although there isn't much carbon buildup left, so that's good. And lastly, I checked the bottom end just to make sure, and it does seem that the main bearing turns over absolutely fine and smooth, so that does leave that opportunity open for us.
So, what do I think happened? Well, there's a few clues here that we have to go off of. I genuinely believe what happened here is that, bear in mind, this thing is on 11,000 miles, and on a small bike that's being ridden at high RPM a fair amount, it would not at all be uncommon to do a valve adjustment at this interval. Typically you can go a fair amount longer, but on the smaller bikes, yes, they sometimes stay in spec really good. My 250L stayed in spec and it was at 30,000 miles, it was dead in spec. But some of these little bikes, when they're ridden at high RPMs, sometimes they can come out of spec a little quicker, or it could have been that it wasn't out of spec and they just heard some weird noise and thought they needed to adjust it. I think somebody went to a shop to get a quote, ended up not liking that quote, and then took it to a buddy to go ahead and fix. And either the buddy or this person ended up misadjusting the valves, and or the tension seemed okay. They've been in there, but the tension seemed okay. I think they probably tried to adjust the tensioner first to see if that took the noise away. It probably didn't, and they went to adjust it, didn't know how, and I bet you these clearances were just a little bit out. Now, I don't think it jumped timing or anything like that. It just, again, the chain was really tight, and it did not show that. Also, another piece of evidence, wherever I put the cam, another piece of evidence is this really strange wear pattern on the camshaft. That truly makes me believe that one of these was just way too tight, and that was pushing the valve out a bit further. Another piece of evidence, 63 miles on the trip. Now, I don't know if that's 63 miles since they filled it up with gas or 63 miles since this happened. I could see a bike going with bad timing for about 63 miles before it completely shits itself. And maybe not bad timing, but bad valve adjustment. I could see a piston having light contact with a valve for that amount of time if it's really light contact, and kind of escalates to not very light contact. But I do believe that to be the cause of this is somebody going in to do a valve adjustment and not knowing how, or maybe they just left the adjuster loose. Maybe they knew how to do it and they just made a simple mistake like that. Either way, what is absolutely certain is that a valve did contact the piston and everybody lost, including me, because I own the fucking thing now. So we're going to decide what to do with it. So here's our two options. We can motor swap it with something pretty cool, or we could rebuild this one. It will probably be cheaper to rebuild this one, but let me know what you think we should do with it, and while I am going to make my own decision, I will absolutely take everything y'all say into account. At the end of the day, I hope you enjoyed my wanton destruction of a 1999 Suzuki GZ250, and I guess if you want to look at it this way, somebody else's wanton destruction of a Suzuki GZ250. Stay tuned, because something will probably happen with this bike, more than likely. There's a good chance that I just sell it for parts or use it for parts for something else, but I can definitely see a potential motor swap or motor rebuild coming. And if I do either of those things, I will be going over a lot of the other parts of the bike, including repainting it. I think I can do a better tail tidy than this. And overall, I think it looks cool. It probably rides relatively nice, but there's some other things it'll need, so I'm just going to have to think about it. Let me know what you all think in the comments, and I will take it to heart. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me a ton, especially if you want to see more content like this. It will also help you, because even if you don't see anything else from me, it will recommend you other content like this. Thank you all so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it, and I will see you all again in the next one. Bye.